So this session is social work research on family, community, children, youth and elderly. To chair this session, we have Professor Shanmugavelaidam ji. He was a former professor. So we have Professor Shanmugavelaidam sir. He is a former professor, Department of Social Work, Loyola College, Chennai, and he is a child right activist. He has written a number of books. He was a student of scholar of Professor K.D. Gangrade, whom we consider as one of the pioneers of Indianization of social work. Professor Shanmugavelaidam has written a book on social legislation, and he has written many more books also. He got state government of Tamil Nadu's award also. So he is not only teacher and educator, researcher. He guided a number of PhDs, and he is also activist and practitioners. After retirement, he is practicing law, advocacy role he is engaged in. Also, he has established his own organization and doing lot of welfare activities, policy advocacy programs for children. In this session, we have Dr. Henry Jordan Liana Pachuao, our own colleague, who is talking on children. Dr. Grace Lalupui Sailo, Dr. Devendran on youth research, Dr. Lakshmi Putran on social work research on welfare of elderly. Now I request Professor Shanmugavelaidam ji to take over the session. So 15 minutes only time. Now please bear with me. Sorry, I could not give more time. We have to go to the parallel session. So please, thank you, sir. Thank you. Please take over, sir.
Thank you. At the outset, I thank Mizoram University and also especially Kanagaraj for giving me the opportunity. Right at the beginning, I know this whole online seminar, they emphasize regarding research in Indian context is undeveloped still. Especially social work research is a very, very infant stage. As far as this session topic they given is the family, children, youth, elderly. Family is an institutional point. It's an institutional setup. As far as children, youth, elderly, these are all specialized groups. So in that context, what is the social work research point of view is that if you go through it our Indian post-independence scenario, because I'm not going to about before independence, we have started with the charity model, whatever may be there, welfare model also there, development model also still we are practicing, rights-based, human rights-based model also there. All the models, all the practice still now prevalent, depends on the context situation is concerned. That is that now as on date, all that is the groups is concerned. But most of the issues are all what they are doing as far as my knowledge is concerned. They are all, most of the research is based on the magnitude, especially in the Ministry of Government of India, they are given only the magnitude of the issue, size of the problem, dimension of the problem, certain extent factors. I'm not using the word called positive factors. They use the word called factors about that particular issue. There are intervention also, certain things they have, certain efficacy of intervention also there. But a lot of limitation is there as on date among these groups. First, I will listen to all the speakers, resource person, then finally I will come to that point. First speaker is concerned, Henry. Is it so? Sir Kanagaraj, first is the Henry.
Dr. Henry is here, sir.
Yes. Henry, you start
yes.
the topic.
Okay, thank you so much to our chairman and to to my colleagues, Professor Kanagaraj, as well as the other teachers here in the university. Well, to give me this opportunity to speak on research related to children in need of care and protection. Of course, children should not be assumed that they are vulnerable because of certain circumstances, because they are vulnerable just because they are children. That is what we must know. And I'll just give a short, I don't have much time, so I'm giving myself 15 minutes for each sub theme. One would be just to give an international perspective, so that we would have across a sectional idea about how we actually view children in the past as well as the present, and then come to the national perspective on how we have been seen children as an Indian society, and then coming to policy matters and the implications that it has on children, and then specifically contextually to Mizoram and what research we have done. So internationally, of course, it goes back as far as 1919. The care for children. I mean, international mandates. So, but then let's skip, a whole lot of history and come to the conventions on the rights of the child in 1992. We know that, India became a signatory to the convention, and not to say that, after that, India has not been working. India, in fact, was very much active in terms of childcare, because we have constitutional provisions, and we did have a children's policy in as early as 1974, and then we have the national scheme of in the name of the integrated child development. So these schemes are some ideas and examples about how we have actually been concerned about such things. However, it's very sad to say that till today, like what our chairman said, is that we have not been able to yet find that kind of interest, or even give more capacity towards research, as well as towards their care and protection. And we find a lot of data related to the abuse of children internationally, and also unfortunately in India. So the concerns for children, like writers like Dominelli, and writers like Robert Holmes, and of course Jovit Logan, Julie Bywaters. So a couple of writers who have given thought about how actually we have negated the importance of children in our discourses, and even academically, and even research, and even socially also, how history, every history in culture have neglected the the very existence, in fact, of children, not to say the least the care and protection. So that is how how gory it was, as far as the early 18th centuries, before that even was concerned. And so basically, like what Bhakri in 2006, what he says is that children have not featured much in academic discourse in the past, and so this is only a kind of a product of let's say the 19th century, and that would also have to do with a lot of development in biology and psychology that took place. Of course, the development of social work was also very instrumental, in fact, in coming up with strategies, in coming up with models as well as theories related to the care and protection of children. So so that is what we have seen in a lot of literatures about how children were viewed. Even Manju Gupta, a very famous writer in the area of children, has also written a lot about how actually we view children as a culture, and each culture in each society does not give much importance culturally to children, and how sometimes, some actions related to culture could have detrimental effect on the growth and development of children. So in the writings of Manju Gupta also, there was a lot of indications about how we did, the adult community were very much involved in the abuses of children across the world. Of course, there are also indications about the concerns for children. McFarlane in 1974, Stone in 1975, 77. A lot of writings have Beckett. In fact, they have also shown some evidences of concerns about how we as humans would nurture our children and evidently become the futures of society. So that aspects was also there. And coming to the from the Indian from the traditional Indian point of view, traditionally we know that children has been primarily the responsibility of the family. So and then we know that it was the Hindu society was after, I mean, not the pre-Vedic period, but after the post-Vedic period, patriarchal became the main form. And of course, so we see some kind of evidences where the male child could have been more preferred than the female child, and this could have some significance or relevance even in the cultural aspects of the traditional Indian society. What was significant about, another very significant thing about the Indian traditional culture was, in fact, unlike other cultures, of course, we do find evidences in many other tribal societies across the world also that, there were different stages of children from conception to the age of, till the age of 16. So each stages had their own, distinctive, let's say, duties, as well as the expected, norms, the expected behavior in each stages. So these kind of divisions highlighted how the biosocial development importance towards the biosocial development of children in traditional India. And each stage, what was interesting is that is actually followed with specific rituals. I don't know whether we still follow these things today or not, but hopefully in some societies, they still do follow this. However, like we said, since the division of the male and the female, gender was quite clear. We these kind of rituals, female, the girl child was actually excluded. However, in contrast to this, what is also very interesting is that we also see, how a mother is actually respected in traditional Indian society. And today also we see a lot of evidences in our daily lives. And so as such, that would also give an indications on how a female gender would have been conceived, in terms of attitude, in terms of actions, in terms of perceptions, etc., and so on and so forth. And we see a lot of evidences about the affection, of course, even towards of children, affections of children, by the adults. And even in the manuscripts, we also see, evidences of child protection, and to girls specifically. So these are very, clear indications that evidences, a lot of evidences were there in terms of the care and protection of children, and of course, even the vulnerable ones also. However, there are a lot of, harmful practices that we do actually follow even till today, traditional practices like child marriages, caste systems that actually, undermines the rights of Indian children, specifically, discrimination against girl child, child labor, and so on and so forth. I think I don't need to go into all the details. Yes.
Yes, you are given
Yes.
broad-
So let me not go into all the details.
What is
And then
what is the topic they given is that social work research on these groups.
Yes, yes, yes.
How it is there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you stick to if you have focus,
Okay,
more
okay.
useful.
Yes, yes.
Whatever things
So,
are all
yeah.
there, but you stick to the topic.
Yes. So when we talk about, yes, I'm just coming to that point because I don't want to go into all the details. So we do have a lot of evidences. So now what we want to know, what we want to say is that, in social work practice, we do have, methods. I think it has been discussed a lot. And then how, social work research would in fact contribute in bringing about, development in terms of in the field of child welfare, in the field of child rights and empowerment as such. So now we have all these methods which my the earlier speakers have talked about. They've talked about casework, they've talked about group work, they've talked about specifically in terms of social welfare administration. So these especially social welfare administration is directly linked to policy implications and how we actually abide by certain rules, constitutional provisions and rules that we have, and the legislations through education. Of course, today the perfect example would be the NEP 2020, and how these kind of things could actually relate to our understanding of how we could make these things and provisions more useful to promote social work research in the area of children in India. And I don't have to say much about that there is a certain paucity in terms of specific areas. But what I would like to say is that to see children from a very let's say eclectic point of view, an ecological perspective in research is what is required. And sometimes a lot of adults, as when we kind of do conduct researches in the area of children in social work practice, even social work practice have a tendency, very difficult. It's not an easy job. Have a tendency to actually, indirectly or like we are unaware of it, but tend to impose certain aspects of research that would not be ethically right for children. Sometimes we're talking about the tools that we create, the determined scales that are there. So all these things. So we must, as far as social work is concerned, must take care that like such impositions are not made, and then ethical standards, especially age-wise. We know that there are certain distinctions of age-wise distinctions made in the psychosocial development of children, and I hope that such kind of considerations are taken when we do research. I've been involved in a couple of research in my years here in as a social work educator, as a teacher, as a researcher also. And then like I have been trying to delve in the younger children, but sometimes what we find is that even if we wanted to delve into the younger children, some of the tools that we actually build and work are not necessarily let's say does not necessarily fit the age of the children, even though it is actually an accepted way of tool making also. So these things has to be considered in a great deal, and how we would best kind of use the participatory method, the play method, so on and so forth. The group work is also one very important method of social work practice that we could use in social work research, to promote, to get more data from children. And then today, from today's light of talk, what I wanted to say is that if we are to use these methods of social work, like we are talking about group work, let's talk about casework practice also. I mean, I think we use, let's say, social research methods like more on descriptive designs. We use like exploratory designs. More on experimental designs. Would also promote how we actually see, not only in a clinical way, but from a biopsychosocial perspective. More data would be able to be generated if we use experimental designs in terms of let's say group work, using group work method to gather data, using casework method to gather data, so on and so forth. So these are some of the concerns that I wish to lay out to you today. And as far as the Mizoram context is concerned, this is my last paragraph that I would like to say. After the establishment of Mizoram University, it has become yes, easier, because there are a lot of experts here within the university to take up projects, MPhil projects, PhD projects, of course, research projects. So these have been very helpful in kind of bringing light to the situations of children in Mizoram. Even in social work here in our department, we have, like in 2011, we have had, around 3. In 2012, we had 2. In 2013, 1. 14, 1 MPhil, 15, around 3. So we have about, around 20 to almost even 30, if we mix it with the PhD research related specifically to children. And I myself have been involved in these kind of MPhil and PhD research in most of them, because my area of specialty being that particular area, and then we must continue this particular trend. I need to continue more also. I not only in terms of PhD. Now MPhil has been scrapped because of the NEP, so it gives a little bit of concern, because we won't be able to, we'll miss out on the MPhil degrees. But now the PhD takes a bit longer. But what we must also concentrate as social work educators and practitioners in NGOs, etc., is to come up with more research projects in the area of children that would definitely help in giving light, to the more darker areas related to the whole specific regions related to these children. And the concept of children has been given in the JJ Act, has been given by many writers. And then I would wish all the participants, as well as everyone, to have a kind of an ecological perspective, not only on the child but on the surroundings, and take into consideration that kind of ecological perspective when we do social work research in India. Thank you so much.
Henry, thank you very much for your talk. As far as the Indian scene is concerned, as far as the social workers concerned, largest number of employment source as on day, large number of social workers working in the child sector field. She had a variety of organizations, INGO is also there, union organization, UNICEF is also there, a lot of national level organization also there. Their primary aim is not a research. They are only here a last, either a tertiary, not in a very 5% they are not. Mostly they involved in the research in the cadre of monitoring, evaluation, preparation of IEC material, all the things they are doing that. See, what is the main point is that we had also all the department having a MPhil, PhD, thing. They are also doing a lot of research on the child sector. Take an example, they may do about that, about the street children, about children in conflict with the law, children in need of care and protection. What is the main point regarding social work point of view? They do like other social science research, only they do it. Specifically, they should give importance to the role of social work in that particular field. That is a missing. Second point is concerned that the schools of social work should take the initiative and call for all the INGOs, the national NGOs, and give their trust area to that for research. That is also possible. Third thing is concerned, we don't want a very big research like a national level or international level. Even a micro level research is also good. All the social students going for the field work agency and everything, better if they can do it in a very small level, micro level research in that. If you have that type of thing, really our research sector will boom. Another aspect is concerned, there are people, they do research, problem in a publication, dissemination of information. That is one of the major limitation in social work. Then only outsider will know about what is the research in that area. Now, thank you very much, Henry. Now, I call upon next to the Grace. Hello? Grace? Going to come?
Hello, sir.
Yes?
Yes. Good afternoon, sir. Please give me a minute while I share my screen, sir. Right. Can anyone tell me if my screen is visible?
Yes, yes.
It is visible. You please go to slideshow mode.
Okay, sir. Right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, sir, our coordinator, colleagues, research scholars, and friends. My topic today is social work research on family and well-being. So this will be the outline of my presentation. Why social work research on families, and then we have a literature review on family studies in the international arena, family studies in India coming to Mizoram. And then from there, we identify the research gaps, and then we look at some of the challenges that have come up from these analyzed literature, and then the research implications, and finally the conclusion. So moving on, as we all know, family is one of the most important social institutions. I'm not going into the definition as such. Most of the world's populations live in families, units, and it is a pervasive social institution, and therefore it is very important in the socialization of individuals. It has a profound impact on children's behaviors and maturity and emotions till they go on into adult life. And family experiences are what we carry on in throughout the whole lifespan, and it helps in stabilizing individuals. So why do we do family research, and why do we say that some families are happier than the others? Why are some families, why do some families have a better well-being? Or and then we are very much interested in this topic, and then we also want to know how families influence our well-being. So this is why we have family research. That is just the basic introduction. So I've collected a few literature, international studies from all around the world. This is a synthesis of studies after 2000, from 2000 to 2021 only. I've put aside the older studies. And so we have a lot of studies that talk about marital breakdown and family conflict. And all of these are mostly in the light of child outcomes. What are the effects of marital breakdown and family conflict? Now, when we understand family conflict, we not only talk about divorce, we talk about separation, we talk about fights like in the family, misunderstandings, we talk about parental alcoholism, and even poverty, and how these affect children. So these are the number of literature we could find. And then parenting, the parenting styles, and how a certain type of parenting affect children's behaviors. And then we have family structure, what type of family is there, and then the communication patterns in the family, the bonding between the parent and the child. So how it affects children's behaviors, how they react to certain situations. So this is the literature that I found. And I found very few literature on family strengths and coping. It have been done by a few. And gender roles and domestic violence, there's a whole lot of literature. I'm sorry I could not show it only on this screen in one slide. Then coming to India, we have a few literature on family conflict and family breakdown. And in India, what we're finding is the changing family structure. There's a lot of literature on the changing family structure. In the morning, our keynote speaker, Professor B. Devi Prasad, had mentioned that the discourse, the continuous debate between nuclear versus joint family. So all that, how it's changing in modern times with urbanization. So there's a lot of literature in India based on that, and quite a few on gender roles and violence. But again, here, very few literature on family strengths and coping, and very less on family therapy. And coming to marriage and marital life, so specifically talking about husband-wife relationship and how they handle marital life, and Saas Bahu kind of studies, those are very less. And then when we come to Mizoram, we have quite a number of family studies just from our department also. You know, here there's a lot of studies on parenting and family structure. And then what I would like to mention is that you know, to add to the richness of literature, I would say that these studies, whether in the international arena or social work or in India or Mizoram, is not just confined to a social work perspective. These literature, it's all from you know, from the point of view of psychologists, from educationists. So we have a variety of literature. Again, I will mention that our keynote speaker had mentioned that, you know, family studies, family research is scattered. It cannot only be confined to social work. It only adds to the richness of the literature, and I'm sure more to the implications of intervention strategies. Now, these are a few of the gaps I mentioned already. Very few literature on family therapy. The emphasis is mainly on the child outcomes, adolescent outcomes. Okay, and in certain ways, kind of not placing emphasis on other family members. And when we talk of gender, we want to be concerned with both genders, or even a third gender for that matter. But usually in family studies, it's the focus is on women, you know, women work-life balance, women's health, which are very important. But again, what about the men? You know, men's issues in the family. So these have not been studied. And then again, we have to do still a lot of research in Northeast and in Mizoram. And the focus mainly through this literature, which I have collected, is on parenting, a lot of parenting styles and parenting effects on children. And I'm sorry, the last one I have, please ignore that. And then, so these are the challenges that family research would, you know, come across. So we say that social work thrives on people's problems. Social work tends to thrive on people's problems and the dark side, let's say. If there were no problems in society, we wouldn't need any social workers. So what happens even in family research, where we are dealing a lot with, you know, abuse, about divorce or drug abuse, and a lot of all that negative energy. So this can be a challenge. So if we could have a focus on strengths-based research from just only a wholly problem focus to a strengths focus, then these could, you know, be implemented in the interventions, and how to deal with, like, as preventive strategies. Okay, and usually these studies are made using a certain number of scales, very good scales that have been developed in the West. Eurocentrism has been mentioned time again in today's seminar by most of the speakers. So again, even in the context of families, context-specific tools are not there. The tools may, you know, bring a lot of very nice quantitative data, but again, does it really bring out the Mizo family, or families in the Northeast, or for that matter, does it really bring about a, you know, the characteristics of the Indian family? So then there is the challenge of family intervention, where, you know, you can identify the challenges. There are certain tools, you can develop your own tools, you can identify the family challenges of different types. But in terms of intervention, so this becomes very difficult, because, you know, people in like, for example, take domestic violence. So people will say, you know, you don't come into my family, this is very private, you know, we don't want any help. And then that help-seeking behavior. So all that, even though the services may be there, but people may not want to access it. Okay, so certain difficulties are there in intervention. So then I'll move on to the further research implications, I have mentioned a few before. So there are changes in contemporary family structure. It's not just a joint family, is not just a nuclear family anymore. We have single person families. We have, stay at home dads. What about gay families? We have to take all that into consideration. These are contemporary issues that have not been addressed. And what about the changing role of women? Okay, we know women, working women, super women, but what about the role of fathers? The role of men in the lives of children. What about house husbands and all that? And marriage and divorce still to be understood, the whys, and how to prevent these situations. And at age of marriage, in the rural areas, maybe the age of marriage is considerably lower, but what we're facing today is we see a lot of spinsters, we see a lot of bachelors, people who choose not to get married. So what about them? Where is the research about them? So these still have to be addressed. And about birth control and fertility, not just for, in terms of family planning, but in terms of childlessness, unplanned childlessness or planned childlessness. So all those things, all these issues that are coming up, these have not been addressed. I'll say not addressed at all. And what about the elderly population? We have mentioned the gap that most of the family studies tend to cater to adolescents, to children, but what about the elderly population? What about families with aging parents? What are the challenges that they face? So in those areas, there's still a lack there. And then, as I've mentioned, the family strengths, these still need to be worked upon. And in terms of intervention, how can we actually carry out, so Dr. Henry has mentioned child protection services, and that I will leave that. But what about marriage counseling services? In a place like Mizoram, let me just mention that we have, let's say, none at all family counseling services, and no research in that field either. So a lot of intervention studies are lacking. Okay, and when we talk of family, why do we have to study family after the problem has already occurred? Why can't we have, preventive interventions like premarital counseling, family life education in schools for the adolescents, so that they actually understand what marriage is about before starting that family? So these are the research implications that I would like to mention. So, and very quickly, I will conclude that we need to have more research on the varied populations. We're still, zoning out the ethnic minorities. What about dual worker families and blended families? And what about family and religion? So these are some of the things that I would like to mention. And then again, context-specific measures, regional and cultural lens to assess the effects of the family on the development and functioning of and well-being of its members, and the prevention strategies, basically not just looking into treatment or rehabilitation, but we're looking into prevention measures. And and making these research findings available to our counselors, to the teachers and the policymakers. And then also we have mentioned that we have a lot of family studies, like dispersed studies from different subjects. So why do we have to say, like, okay, this is not social work research? Why can't we integrate those studies for finding the best approach? And then, lastly, focusing on the strengths of individuals, focusing on the strengths of family. So looking at family strengths and working from there, and not just looking only at the negative side. So that is all for my presentation. These are my references. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Grace Saila. You have presented well regarding family and the well-being, the topic. It's good because as on day, if you see our Indian scenario about family studies and everything, innumerable literature available there. That's the one fact we got to accept it. But the problem is that social perspective, this family studies, the family well-being is available. That's a questionable one. We are all social work. We have very limited resources with that. So our focus should be on how social work method, how social work technique can help in the family strengthening, family functioning, family process, other things. That might have our focus hereafter, our focus, because there are sociology people also studying family dynamics, psychology people also study. There are specific universities, I know about MS University, Baroda, having a department called a family studies unit itself. University study a family studies unit. What is our emphasis is be how social work can intervene in the whatever issues you are mentioning. That will be our focus area. Now, especially post-independence scenario, especially our government of India constitutional framework, they accepted family is one of the basic institutions. That's why they have established a family court act, family court in everywhere, all the high courts there. Based on that family court and the family thing, they have also established a family counseling center. Almost all family counseling centers, social workers are employed. That is the main thing, because almost all social workers are there in the family, even though the working conditions may be poor or not, that's a different thing. But they are all social work. So what we need is that we have to consolidate their work into a documentation form that it can be used as our literature, that can be used for our social work curriculum. That is a missing. That's a missing point is concerned. There are social workers working in almost all places. They are not consolidated their research point of view, their practice point of view. That can be incorporated in our culture. That is a major thing. Then if we have our own Indianized point of literature can evolve. That's my feeling. Thank you very much. Now, third speaker is concerned, Devendran.
Sir, vanakkam. So, respected Chairperson, Professor Shanmuga Velayutham, the session coordinator, Professor Kanagaraj Easwaran, and my co-speakers, Dr. Henry Zodin Liana Pachau, Dr. Grace Lallubi Sailo, Dr. Lakshmi Putran, and Dr. Elizabeth, and the distinguished participants and the paper presenters. And let me thank the organizing team as well for giving this wonderful opportunity to discuss the research on youth development in India. I'm very much privileged under the chairmanship of Chairperson as a Professor Shanmuga Velayutham. It's very nice to discuss this particular presentation with him. And so let us go to the objectives of my presentation to know the research on youth development in India with specific reference to Northeast region. And the second objective of my presentation is to identify the research gap and scope for research on youth development. Based on these two objectives, the presentation will be deliberated. And the introduction part, I'm going to give a brief introduction because without telling the significance of this youth, I cannot go. And also the youth development initiative was taken, when it was taken, why it was taken, and how the research of in India carried out. And apart from that, how this particular research really going and where is the lacuna, where is the gap, I would like to highlight from my presentation. And youth is an important section as well and a significant stage of human life, which is very well known to everyone. And today I was hearing the news from all over the country that India is a very youthful nation and India is a country of youth. The human resources very high. The young people, almost 50% of the globe of our country represents the working population. So therefore, the United Nations report 2014 states that India has the world's largest youth population with 356 million from the age group 10 to 24 years, while comparing with China, 269 million. Among 1.8 billion young people of the globe, in which 28% comprises of Indian youth. Economics Times 2014 states that. So India is recognized as one of the youngest nations of the world with over 50% of the population under the age of 30 years by 2020. At present, we are going towards that. So, which was I was mentioning earlier. It is also stated that world's youngest country, which 64% of the population, the working age group. This is the thrust of the young people, why we have to give importance, significance, where this youth force has to be tapped and how it could be used for our nation building. So that is the ultimate. So the youth population in India expected to exceed these things by the median age, that we call it a demographic dividend, which is high. So so we have to use this particular age group productively and constructively, because we have that median age of 28, which is considerably less than expected median age of China and Japan, which are the very laborious countries for the economic development at a global level. So youth is defined without knowing the definition, we cannot go into it. So in that context, the youth, according to various definitions, it varies from region to region, it varies from country to country as well. Apart from that, this adolescent population is also inherent in it. So which without leaving, when we look at the age group, the adolescent age is also comprising of it. So almost 19.2% of the total population comprises of this adolescent group. So respectively, both adolescents and youth population, almost 40% of the total population of India. And in the northeastern context, in the northeast India, 4% of the total youth, the population of youth comprises in this age group of 15 to.
Devendran, your
Yes,
slideshow is concerned not matching with your you update slideshow.
Slideshow mode போங்க. Slideshow mode. Please go to slideshow mode and go to the correct slide.
Now only first slide is there.
now can you see the slide now?
Yes. Now it's okay.
So now, so these are all the in the Mizoram context, youth population of Mizoram in the age group of that is 14 to 29 years. There are 3,24,397, which constitutes 29% of the national level. So in that way, again, it is more than the national average when we compare with the population strength is very high in Mizoram context as well, according to 2011 census. Now we move on to the youth development initiatives taken by the government of India and other policy making institutions. So when we look at the concept youth development initiatives, over last 2 decades globally and nationally, this particular concept were emerging. Earlier, youth welfare approach was there. So slowly what happened, the national youth policies in the year 1988, the International Youth Year, by the time our government of India formulated a national youth policy covering all the different sections of the youth. Again, the new policy came in 2003 and again 2010, 2014 as such. So the recent national youth policies has defined the youth as the age group of 15 to 29 years. So which means, again, it is redundant there. So youth development in terms of what it talks about. So I was going through the literature when we look at it. So far, in Indian context, I have now never come across a solid book for youth work and youth development in terms of Indian context. I found it Youth in India by Saraswati. That is the book which I always, in the 1988 period, it was done very old study. And also in the 90s, again, Joe Arimpur, Father Joe Arimpur, he contributed on Indian youth perspective. So apart from that, I found a lot of motivational type of studies, no studies on the youth development aspect. And then now you see the term, what exactly the youth development in terms of Western context, the development is different. Youth development, they are talking about positive youth development. I was not why there is a positive youth development itself, which means something wrong. Critically, I would like to talk about that. Then youth development in terms of Indian context, it refers to employment, appropriate education, skill development. In this context only our country is focusing towards, and the budget is allotted for the development of youth in the 2011 to 2012 budget. And then based on this 2014, priority areas were given. 10 priority areas were being focused in the National Youth Policy 2014, keeping in view of the education, employment, skill development, all these aspects taken into consideration. I don't want to go further about the National Youth Policy. It is a wonderful document which is having more than 100 pages. If you go through, if the policies, the objectives well framed, and if it is implemented in all the grassroots, definitely the youth population will develop in terms of education, skill development, such a way it has. And also through that only National Skill Development Council and National Skill Development Ministry for National Skill Development separately formulated. And so in that way, for this particular research, what I was doing, I was going to this Shuddh Ganga portal, InflibNet net PhD thesis, how the youth development researches are taking place in India. So the leading institutions, TISS and Madras School of Social Work, Delhi University and other universities I was going through, still it is upgrading the portal. They are upgrading the studies whichever conducted. So the purpose of this particular paper is for the last 1 decade, how the studies were going on in the context of youth development. So I was going through, in that way, TISS, I found out the areas where the youth focus was given. One is on livelihood, well-being, youth participation in local governance, and sexually transmitted disease, drug. So in this particular context only the studies are there. I have no time. So in that way, instead of going through taking the thesis and analyzing how the methodologically, how the study has been conducted in a social work perspective. So what I was thinking that we are here for, our department started our research from 2005 onwards, and then from 2010 onwards, I'm guiding for MPhil research, almost 20 researchers. MPhil research I have been guiding, and also in that I have made an analysis how this study is carried out. So when we look at it, all this based on the National Youth Policy, it focuses on Swami Vivekananda's ideology and Indian perspective and holistic development. That is what I come to understand. So holistic development of youth, keeping the youth as a center, psychological, social, spiritual, and social aspects to be developed. So keeping in view the policy as far framed and then documented. Then we move on to the analysis of the youth development research, which was conducted in our Department of Social Work, Mizoram University, to examine the trends in research topics and approaches within the field of youth development by focusing on the 4 key areas. One is on population characteristics, types of youth, methodology, research setting, and topical areas covered. So in this area, I explored what I have done along with my scholars. So I was doing an analysis in order to find out where the gap is, in order to assess the body of the knowledge, where we have to contribute more. So in that context, ultimately, it gave an agenda for future research directions. So in that way, first there were around 20 studies on MPhil studies. In that way, I found out exclusively for 15 studies meant for youth aspects on youth related issues and youth development issues. So population characteristics when I was doing, so early adolescence age group covered 2 studies were there, which means 13% covers there, and then late adolescence 15 to 18 years. So in this early adolescence, which means juvenile youth were there, juvenile youth, children in conflict with law. So I will tell you the other slides, it will give you a full picture about it. And late adolescence 3 studies, 20% covered there, and adolescents overall from 14 to 18 years of age group, 1/3 of the studies covered on that particular age group and of that particular population of youth. And the young adult 18 to 24 years 3, that is 20%, 1/5 of the study, and older adult 2, 13%. So this is from this particular point of view. Again, the focus is more on 14 to 18 years adolescent groups, and then comes the young adult. So from this thing, we come to know the focus has to be given on young adult and adolescents, where the challenge the youth are facing. And table 2, types of youth. What type of youth it has been covered? So student youth 8 studies, 53% covered. That means more than half of the studies covered on student youth. Non-student youth 1/3, and then migrant youth less than 1/10, and then unemployed youth again 1/10. So from here, student youth has to be focused more. There is and then non-student youth. This is the way I come to understand in the Mizoram context as well. And types of youth in the context of, so it's the same thing. When we look at the pie chart, you can see more understanding. That's what I put in this pie chart. So more than half of the circle is covered by the student youth and the studies. And then we move on to the third table, methodological approaches. So what sort of methodological approaches this particular study is carried out? So methodological approach, when we look at it, qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method approaches. So we in our department, and qualitative, so far under this 20 studies, 15 studies, no qualitative approach, exclusively used it by the scholars and by the study conducted, and quantitative aspects, quantitative approach almost 40%, mixed methods, so 60%, more than. So we go for more mixed method approaches in this particular research. That's what quite obvious from this table. And that's what we can integrate the mixed method approaches, like the qualitative approaches and the quantitative approaches, the PRA techniques, and then we use other focus group discussions, and even activity schedule, all those daily activity schedule and other seasonal diagram, all those things we use, incorporate in this mixed method approaches. That's what we come to know. So it gives a very good picture in order to understand the real challenge, what they are facing in the society. And then we move on to the specific methodologies adopted in the studies, specific methodologies. So here exploratory design, 2 designs were on exploratory design, descriptive 1/5 of the study on descriptive, and again diagnostic. We used diagnostic, no studies on diagnostics, and experimental, no so far. And then interview with a tool which we adopted, interviewing, direct interview method, and schedule, interview schedule. These were the used almost 26%, which means 1/4 of the people, the studies use the tool interviewing or interview technique. And the questionnaire almost more than near about for 50% were questionnaire, and case studies are also most of the studies, almost 40%, more than 1/3, and focus group discussion discussions were also used by the conducted on this particular aspect, that is 40%, and PRA technique again 1/4. So literature review theory. So here there is a when we will look at, I was looking all the studies. The literature review is what are the studies available, but theoretical aspect is missing. How it has been implemented, that it has been used in the study is not that much rigor there. And let's move on to another table, table 5, research setting. So from my study of about 15 studies, what sort of study settings have covered on the youth development? Home and family. So family 20%, institutionalized, I told institutionalized setting, that is juvenile young youth, institutionalized 3. One study on drug addiction. So that's what an institutionalized in K-ward. So 20%, that is 1/5 of the study conducted on this particular institutionalized setting. School setting 1/3, school setting, college less than 1/10, and youth in community 20%. So open setting, which means, so in this way, we come to understand that where the major family, institution and school and community, there the setting where the concentration has to be given for youth development, which means there are a lot of issues coming up, maybe a family issues, well-being issues, all those things. And in the topic areas, with regard to the topic areas, what sort of area it has been covered, the studies. So professional development, so far no professional development studies under the 15 studies, and academic performance related more than, less than 1/5, and then a risk behavior 1/5, and assert on capacity building. Here, assert on capacity building is on entrepreneurship, youth employment, skill development, life skills. So 3 studies were found out on this particular aspect, that is 1/5. Health and well-being, 1 study, now it is emerging. Peer relationship, peer group relationship related network, social capital, all 2 studies. And family, again, family is again major chunk found out there, 1/4, more than 1/4 of the study. Psychosocial issues are emerging, 1 study. From this particular perspective, I come to understand this. Youth are really having a lot of challenges in terms of family issues and behavioral, relationship issues and their well-being. So and psychosocial through that family relationship. So where the challenges the youth are facing from this study, it is very clear. And so in that way, I come to understand that. So youth, so when we look at what sort of model, what sort of perspectives will be useful. So in that way, youth keeping in view family, school, peers, and community. So it is, we have to understand the whole context of the youth, because it is a very, very vulnerable group, and it is not also a vulnerable group. It is a very important group where caring and love and affection has to be given from the family. That is what the ethnicity, culture, social context, these things has to be studied thoroughly, because when we look at the young people, the family is the place where the parents are the role model, and the ethnic culture, ethnicity, social context, how they look into it. So in this way, we have to look at each individuals, where they are coming from, what is their background. So without knowing that, we cannot. So again, school, healthy, conducive, congenial environment has to be developed. In terms of community values, belief systems. I request Professor Nagaraj to mute all, please. Mr. Kanagaraj, there is some noise. I request Professor Nagaraj to mute. So values, belief systems, religion, peer groups, when you look at it, and national youth policy obligations. So in this way, we have to study thoroughly. Here the concept comes in. And models for youth development, holistic model for youth, leisure and recreation, again, constructive development model for youth is needed, life skills promotion model for youth, youth participation, community development. These areas, there are separately to be ventured and studied properly. Still in PhD work, I was doing in this area thoroughly. Then let us test this particular models which is fit in our Indian context. That's the process is going on, and the scope for research on youth development. So I was doing a research, make a analysis. Because still there are a lot of scope in terms of methods, social casework, working with individuals, where youth intervention can be done. I have jotted down so many areas. So in that way, working with individuals, adolescent issues, alcoholism, anxiety, depression. So there were a number of problems. Identity crisis in terms of Northeastern youth, and then love affairs, boy-girl relationship, mental health issues, mobile phone addictions. So these are all the contemporary issues that are coming up, where youth intervention can be done. Studies can be done with using the social work methods, casework itself, individual, and substance abuse, teenage pregnancy. So these are all the things. And the primary methods. And so social group work methods also can be used exclusively for areas of intervention. For example, alcoholism, drug addiction, broken families, friendship issues, and economic issues, extramarital affairs, young youth, group counseling, HIV/AIDS, and again relationship issues. So here, and community organization itself in youth in community organizations, and the primary method, where economic issues, educational issues, migration, youth migration, migrant youths. So you see the COVID-19 has shown how much migrant youth are there in different places of the metropolitan cities. So that is a great issue, migrant youths, rural youth issues. And it's another issue is that, again, this migrant youth, where if the lockdown is keep on going, then if they come to their own village, back to their own village, what will be the problem? What is their livelihood issues? So that's what another issue is keeping on. And youth sensitization programs, training programs, all those things. And social actions, vulnerable youth, youth rights, migration, secondary methods, advocacy methods can be done. And youth movements against corruption also related to, and social welfare administration, which was all in the previous session also they were discussing exclusively youth. There are a lot of avenues. So youth scholar, in terms of scholarship, youth scholastic performance, education, sports and games, welfare for dependents of young prisoners, welfare for physically challenged youth. So like this, so many places. Exclusively for research in India, these are all the gray areas where youth development research could be done. Youth and academic stress. Right now, the youth and academic stress, online system, how the stress taking place, youth and career guidance, youth and employment, youth and internet, youth and leisure and recreation, youth and politics. Youth are not involving in politics. Why? What is the reason? They should come. And youth and religion, they should have a good understanding about youth and religion, the concept. Youth and skill development. You see, skill development still, we are only 9% of the whole India's population skilled youth are, only 9%, where remaining 91%, where are they? And youth and small addiction behavior, youth and smartphone addictions, youth and spirituality, again in Northeastern context, youth and religion and youth and spirituality itself, there is a lot more thing to be done. Youth and stress, and youth and culture. Youth culture is another area where, and youth and value systems and LGBTQ, these are all the gray areas. There are so many scope are there for youth, exclusively for youth development related studies. So from this particular presentation, I have covered the significance of youth and why the study could be conducted, and what is youth development. It is more on terms of education, employment, skill development according to the Indian context, not competency building as the Western youth concept talking about. So then we have seen the studies which we have covered in the Department of Social Work, about 15 studies from that, how the methodological issues taking into consideration of the population characteristics, and then their type of youth, what type of studies have been done in the department, and the settings and their methodological issues related to their limitations. What are the limitations in this particular study which we have seen? So even sampling so many like this, I request all other department also, the studies for the 1 decade, they can make an analysis how the trend is emerging. In that particular way, we can do a lot of even MSW dissertations and small projects conducted, what could be done in that way. A lot of social work research could be focused there. So therefore there are a lot of scope and avenues, and also these are all the gap which we have found out. Thank you, and Jai Hind. And with this, I conclude. Thank you so much for once again for giving this wonderful time. And thank you, Chair, for this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Devendra. It's well presented with all facets of youth development and research study also. What are the research studies available there? Specifically, you have mentioned about your own department, booking research study. What are the various areas involved in the research studies? It's a very good presentation. It's a very eye-opener for so many people, especially the need for youth development in Indian context. But it's my thing that you have prepared one model. You mentioned about family, peer system, school, and other things. You should mention about in there, one of the aspects it should be the state. State also should be there. What is my personal feeling is concerned, see, compared to other countries and other things, it's still both the central and state government, they are not recognizing the youth potential. They say on the policy and other things that they are not given as much as the importance. Even now, they become part of the Ministry of Education, Ministry of some other thing. We are not giving much importance to youth development. That may be one of the reasons is concerned we are not able to produce evidence-based research on youth to convince a policymaker, especially policymaker. They are the people, they have to do that policy, program, financial implication, other things. In that context, what happens, we need a state intervention also, that's the thing. Overall, very good, well presented. Thank you very much. Because the time is very short, we can have a next speaker. The next speaker.
Dr. Lakshmi Putran, sir.
Yes.
Sir, Shanmugam.
Yes. Namaste to all. Myself, Dr. Lakshmi from Department of Social Work, Central University of Kerala. At the outset, I profusely thank Professor Department of Social Work, Mizoram Central University, and Professor Kanagarajeshwaran.
Lakshmi, you are from Kerala Central University?
Sir?
You are from Kerala Central University?
Yes, I'm working in Kerala, but I'm from Karnataka basically.
Okay, working in a Kerala Central University?
Yes.
Okay. One Divakar also, that is the student.
Okay, shall I proceed with my presentation? Yes, I'm not going to share any PPT as such. So I thank Department of Social Work Center, Mizoram Central University, and Professor Kanagarajeshwaran for giving me this opportunity to make a presentation on the topic social work research and welfare of older persons. So, of course, the very aim of social work research is to build social work knowledge base to solve problems in social work practice and also problems related to social policies. However, there are no standard demarcation between social work research from research in allied fields like sociology or psychology as far as research in the field of gerontology is concerned. So hence, work research in the field of gerontology complies to this generalized nature of research that resonates with its allied fields like psychology and sociology. But still, social work research has the potential to bring in change. This change can be radical or piecemeal to the spectrum of gerontology. See, social work, when researching in older adults, mostly which focuses on gerontology, which is multidisciplinary. That means which is concerned with physical, mental, and social aspects and implications of aging, whereas medical sciences focus on geriatrics, which is a medical specialty focusing on care and treatment of older persons. So gerontology is an umbrella discipline, and hence social work research in the field of aging is necessarily gerontological in nature. So there are certain theories related to gerontology are emerged, especially the first theory of gerontology was emerged in the year 1990 by Burgess. The theory is called as the role-less role of the aging. Then we have theories on aging successfully, like we have certain theories like related to aging successfully, like activity theory of aging successfully by Havigrust, disengagement theory of aging successfully. Then we have theory of successful aging by Robert J. Havigrust. Then successful aging by Rowe and Kahn. Then zero transcendence theory. And next is active aging theory, which was that was the concept which was developed by WHO in the year 2002 as a contribution to the second United Nations World Assembly on Aging held in April 2002. Came up with the idea of active aging. So what is this active aging is? Active aging is the process of optimizing opportunities for health, participation, and security in order to enhance the quality of life as people age. This is what's been, conceptualized by WHO, and the concept is more of right-based than need-based. That is, champions the cause of equal opportunity for people in all aspects of social life as they age. So the very latest concept and theory in the field of gerontology is healthy aging by WHO. Healthy aging emphasizes the need for action across multiple sectors and enabling older people to remain a resource to their families, communities, and economies. So this is the term gerontology itself reflects that the action which is required from multiple sectors. It is multidisciplinary in nature, majorly focusing on psychological or mental, social, and economic aspects also. So the very idea presented by WHO under the concept of healthy aging is very, very specific and very, very concrete, which emphasizes on making use of different sectors for the empowerment of elderly people. So social work, education, and gerontology, the case of India. So we have presented an article in the year 2019 in which we have emphasized on the importance of incorporating gerontology in the spectrum of social work syllabus. So it was identified that social work profession has always been the knight arms at for the protection of the dignity of vulnerable sections of the society. So this concern has resulted in the establishment of gerontological social work practices, and the schools of social work across the globe has established curriculum modules offering specific courses on gerontological social work. Besides specific courses, the theme of old age has become a common element in social work education. Even social work education in India too has been informed by the need and relevance of gerontological social work. Even the UGC model curriculum for social work has laid special emphasis on the need for establishing optional courses on gerontological social work. However, it is unfortunate that while almost all Indian universities have academic portions pertaining to gerontology in their social work syllabi, most of the curriculum is largely reliant on medical and pathological model. The themes of active aging, successful aging, and graceful aging have not yet penetrated into the curriculum. So only a few universities offer an optional paper on gerontological social work. So in the background of steadily increasing demographic dividend of elderly population, the social work curricula should necessarily be revised in relevant terms to give more importance to the theme of aging, especially active aging. Overview of gerontological researches in India. So if you look at the historical aspects, Manusmriti is one of the early texts that deals with the psychosocial aspects of aging. The idea in the text largely resembled the disengagement theory of aging. Like disengagement theory came later, but still we say that disengagement, Manusmriti, largely resemble the disengagement theory. We should say that disengagement theory, which was later developed, that resembles Manusmriti. And this Manusmriti suggests disengagement and gradual non-involvement in the family and mundane activities during the old age, while trying to lead a very simple life. Like according to Manusmriti, the life course is divided into several stages. They are Balya, that is childhood, Brahmacharya, adolescence, and youthhood, Grihastha, wedded adulthood, Vanaprastha, early old age, and Sannyasa, late old age. So old age is supposed to begin at 60 years. Its onset is celebrated as Sashti Purti in India, or the completion of 60 years. It also marks the completion of the stage of establishing a family and rearing children. And the stage of Vanaprastha is a period when the individual generally disengages from the bonds of family life and trains himself for the next stage, Sannyasa. And during the Sannyasa, there is a complete renunciation of bondage, and time is spent in prayer and penance and preparing to die. So it doesn't mean that we have to, accept into disengagement theory as a whole, but it depends on the persons, who accept. Maybe those who are, who want to disengage themselves in the main roles, what they have in their family, community, and society. For them, definitely this Manusmriti, the idea which is presented in Manusmriti, will be very helpful. So apart from that, it was in the 1950s for the first time that a few articles on aging appeared in journals, followed by a few scientific studies in the early 1960s. And the early doctoral thesis in psychosocial gerontology also appeared in the late 1960s and 1970s. 1970s also saw a wider range of articles covering the fields of biology and the various social sciences such as psychology, sociology, anthropology, and social work also. So this constitutes the pre-1982 era. And the United Nations Vienna Declaration of the International Year of the Elderly 1982 spurred research activity in aging in India also. And apart from that, the foundation of the Association of Gerontology in 1982 at the Geriatric Society of India, already established in 1979, brought gerontologists in India together. So one of the landmark as far as in the history of gerontological studies is concerned, the Venkateswara University from the Department of Psychology, as a part of their master's course, they started gerontology as their subject in the year 1978, and was later raised to the level of master's specialization in 1989. And a Center for Research on Aging was started at the same university in 1983. Soon a string of conferences, seminars, and research projects were also organized at the different level. Then major gerontological researches in India. Currently we have very research at the national level, that is longitudinal aging study in India, that is LASI. LASI is a full-scale national survey of scientific investigation of health, economic, and social determinants and consequences of population aging in India. So LASI is a nationally representative survey over 72,000 older adults aged 45 and above across all states and union territories of India. So LASI is doing perfectly well. They are concentrating on covering the major portion of the elderly population in India. Then apart from that, we have old age research reports and HelpAge research report. HelpAge in India is a leading NGO in India working with and for disadvantaged older adults. Apart for working for providing help to the elderly, they do have a lot of research publications, reports pertaining to aging every year. And HelpAge India has a full-fledged policy research and development department which studies and collates information on this subject. So some of the research areas include elder abuse research reports, state of elderly in India, social security in old age, and age-friendly environment. So all these are the research areas of HelpAge India. So locating social work research in the spectrum of gerontological research, how we can do that? See, there is a dire need for the discipline to venture into research methods that are unique to the discipline. Maybe like I proposed for intervention research, because this is one of the areas where social work research can make original contribution. And action research, definitely where it seeks transformative changes through simultaneous process of taking action and also doing research. Then critical social work research. Here, critical social work refers to theory and practice, which assumes that economic, cultural, and social structures privilege some and not others. So, and those who are not privileged tend to need social work service because of their position in such structure. So critical social work can be used as a methodological and theoretical framework to bring out the economic, cultural, and social structures that need to marginalize the older adults from mainstream. Then advocacy research, definitely this kind of research involves carried out with the intention of providing evidence and arguments that can be used to support a particular cause or position of position. So this would be very, very helpful by providing evidences so that there should be policy level changes that the strategies, whatever you use while working with the elderly. So advocacy research is commonly carried out by pressure groups, lobby groups, and interest groups. Social work profession can rely more on this form of research to make the research finding actually in the policy level. So there are currently hundreds of social work research end up in shelves of university libraries. With advocacy research aided by professional associations, the recommendation of the research can make a change to the situation. Then apart from that, definitely, as it has been already mentioned by all other presenters, that definitely we can also assess the effectiveness of social work methods. Social case work, that is working with individuals and social groups, can play a very, very important role. Definitely social workers can apply these while working with the elderly. They can assess the effectiveness of these methods, especially social case work and social group work. As far as psychosocial approach for elderly is concerned, so nowadays even I have learned that even some of the institutions like NIMHANS and all, in the psychosocial approach, they are applying social case work and social group work, especially to bring the changes in the individual. Definitely when we are working with the elderly, we can apply social case work and social group work method and see the effectiveness of these methods that can contribute a lot for the original research. So research and welfare of older adults. In a country where 2/3 of the elderly are poor and where the government simply cannot afford to prioritize funded elder care, what strategies must be adopted to buttress the sagging potential of the family to continue as the primary caregiver? Maybe research related to this definitely can help in the process of the welfare of the adults. What are the priorities for short-term and long-term interventions? So these are the research questions among many others that the directors of research and planners of research policy must address in the immediate policy. So in conclusion, I just would like to say that the national policy on the elderly, prepared in consultation with experts in the field and promulgated by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, has stressed the importance of research, particularly policy relevant research on the elderly. So the policy has underscored the role of governmental and non-governmental agencies to fund and organize research on elderly, plan and execute interventions, and to make available the data thus collected to the policy making bodies. So even various departments of social work across the country are also contributing for the knowledge base, research base, as far as the spectrum of gerontology is concerned. We have a lot of, there are dissertations, MSW dissertations are coming up, MPhil dissertations are coming up. There are few PhD theses are also coming up, and some of the journal articles are also coming up as far as elderly research is concerned. Since last 2018, we from the Department of Social Work, Central University of Kerala also, we are focusing, as we have students who are doing PhD in this particular area. We have done certain research on integrating elderly into the community socio-economic model. Then we have also presented a paper called as Towards a Pro-Elderly Social Work curricula, which is also published. Then ageism among undergraduate students. Do grandparents make a difference? For this, the data was collected by the undergraduate students, and the same is being published. Then so these are certain, and also the impact of music therapy on elderly, which we have done it in an old age home. So similarly, a lot of good number of studies are coming as far as spectrum of gerontology is concerned. Thank you. This is all I wanted to make a presentation. I thank the chairperson for patiently hearing to me. Thank all the participants and Department of Social Work, Mizoram Central University. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. It's a really, really erudite, very scholarly presentation about research, social research on elderly. Actually, we need a type of a very highly research. There is a dimension about aging, research on aging, what are the gaps in the research is there. It's a very good presentation. Really appreciate your presentation is there. Because now aging is concerned that it's also evolving process. In the 1980s, in Chennai, one of my friends is involved in the aging research and everything. He also a practitioner, his name is T. Krishnankuti Nair, T.K. Nair. He evolved one model called a part-time daycare center, but afterwards no follow-up and nothing. The social work also, in the early stage, I don't know now at present any social worker having this type of model is there. Thank you for your scholarly presentation is there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, is there any other next speaker is there?
Sir, no speaker, sir. We can wind up discussion. Is there means questions we can take for discussion or otherwise.
Okay. Right, okay. Any other questions you have? Yes, okay. So my personal view is concerned all the speakers, 4 persons. They are all well presented with a very good methodology used. All the points are very relevant, especially this topic is concerned emerging field in our social work. We should also track that what are the recent trend and emerging. Really, we should also, like other resource person are speaking, we have to revise our curriculum. We have to revise our fieldwork approach. Even our priority area for research is also, we have to change it. Then, my job definitely we will have a very big, very bright future for social work is there. Most of the youngsters, very bright. Thank you. If you have any other question, you can have.
Any scholar wants to ask questions can directly ask question also. Though you have not put 1 or 2 questions, at least we should take, because discussion is very important for us.
Since it is already 1.5 hours late, all must be tired also.
Yes, yes. I think we can wind up, sir.
Yeah.